everybody, this is Munson Steed, and welcome to Rolling Out's Design and Dialogue, where we bring you those individuals who are creating spaces, ideas, and places where we can grow our vision of who and what we are. There has to be a curator whenever you walk inside a museum, a building. There is someone who has a vision for your eyes to meet before you get there. That one beautiful brother is a brother who has put together an amazing adventure for your heart, soul, and your mind to take flight and to be inspired. I've had the pleasure of going and walking through it. The immersive experience is one that will give you the courage to see and understand why the title of the book, Why Should White Boys Have All the Fun, and understand that there's a titan waiting to be opened in your spirit each and every day. Welcome, Robert Parker, to Design and Dialogue.
Thank you, Munson, for having me.
Yeah, let's get right to it. The name of just naming a space and beginning to understand you're going to curate a space, and you're at a phenomenal. I mean, like, if there was a beacon of light in Baltimore, there's this beacon of light that is at the Reginald Lewis. It says Maryland, but it just to all museum right there. It's iconic, and now you have his iconic whole curated Titan exhibit. Can you share your vision and how you first approached it and got inspired to move into designing the idea?
Yeah, I think for my team and I, we wanted to first think about the fact that we are celebrating our 20th anniversary this year. And we opened officially June 25, 2005. And so in that 20-year period, there's never been a comprehensive sort of examination of the namesake for the institution. Of course, the Reginald F. Lewis Museum does not focus solely on his life and legacy. It is about the experiences of Black people in Maryland. You know, our mission is to talk about those experiences of Black Maryland historically and contemporarily. And so we thought it was time. It was overdue, actually, to celebrate this legend and to have the world understand in greater depth who he is, or who he was, I should say, and how his legacy has this indelible connection on all of us. So that's how the conversation kind of began.
For those who are going to visit the exhibit, or for any of the individuals that you would want to invite, what are the first three things that you would want them to leave there feeling after they've experienced the Titan exhibit?
Absolutely. I think for me, I would want them to first understand the strength of Reginald F. Lewis in terms of a person who was very stick-to-itive in his quest for success, right? He was early on, he was focused and he knew what he wanted out of life. And he, in many ways, sort of spoke things into the universe. And it happened that those things came to fruition. I mean, he stated that he wanted to be the richest African American in the world. And that happened. He made that comment in undergrad. And so I think for people to come and experience this exhibit, I want them to be able to take away his strength, you know, and I'm hoping that the stories that we tell will give people some insight to his stick-to-itiveness. So that would be my first takeaway. Second, I think his determination, which is very different from strength, right? And I think his determination to succeed in everything that he took part in. In high school, he was a triathlete. I mean, he excelled at basketball, football, and baseball. And of course, then taking that athleticism into college. I mean, he went to Virginia State College, now university, on a football scholarship. And of course, exceeding there. And it wasn't until an injury took place that kind of put that piece on pause for him. So then he became determined to excel in his academics. And he created this schedule that we actually show. I mean, that handwritten schedule was a very focused, regimented, methodical way for him to succeed in college. And we have that handwritten schedule mounted in the Titan exhibit. So you can see what he was thinking in the 1960s in terms of what it meant for him to excel, well after his college days. And so that determination, I think, is another important message we want our visitors to take away. And I think young people can see, how this now icon, historical, African-American icon, how determined and focused he was in college, as early as college. And I think the last piece is just the humanization of Reginald F. Lewis. We know that people understand him as this corporate giant. We know that people know his name as this major philanthropist, but I don't know that people know the more or softer side of Reginald F. Lewis. Reginald F. Lewis as a family man, as a father, as a husband. And so we wanted to make certain that that story came out, because I think that's one of those lesser known and more undocumented ones. And so we wanted that to be a part of this conversation. And we wanted people to feel, the mark that he made on his daughters.
When you think about the aspect of traveling in the space, you guys do an awesome job of allowing someone to immerse themselves and say their name. At least that's what I did. Mm-hmm. And say I can do a big deal and then sit at a desk that he sat at, ride on a plane that he's flown on, wear his clothes and think about your clothes, and just allow them into spaces that aren't often occupied by individuals like myself without someone who loves us to allow us into their space. Can you share how curating that level of immersiveness is to designing the mindset that we're able to take out once you're exposed?
Absolutely. I think it's important for every visitor to be able to have a connection to the stories we're trying to tell in a tangible way. And I think, we talk about those intangible ideas throughout the museum and throughout this particular show, but how do we make that real for someone? And I think relevance and provocation helps that. And I think that, creating or recreating spaces that were real in Reginald F. Lewis's life, and then getting a visitor today in a contemporary way to connect to those spaces helps them understand his world better. And so for us, we wanted to recreate his office. We wanted to create, the jet. This was an African-American man in the 80s flying around in the jet, because for him, that was about efficiency. And that for him was one of the best perks. I think he referred to it as the ultimate perk, to be able to have his own jet. And so we wanted to create this jet fuselage sort of recreation so that people can get a chance to immerse themselves in what it would have felt like to be in this personal space. We now have complemented that jet scene with images of him on his jet. And so I think that's important for people to see, and it makes it real for them. And then we've even sort of called it the jet setter, right? And so there's a play on words there, because we think that people, again, that's another takeaway where people can say to themselves, well, in a way, I'm a jet setter. I'm traveling here and there. You might not own your own jet, but again, it gives you this opportunity to at least dream, or at least to make some connections to Reginald F. Lewis's real life.
If you were giving a speech to all the entrepreneurs who, I know when I was there for the opening, the author of, or co-author of his book was there. Mm-hmm. Why should white boys have all the fun? Why should every entrepreneur in America, black or white, who dreams to have their own company, who dreams to buy something, do a merger or an acquisition, who dreams to have their name on a Harvard building, or dreams to put their name on a HBCU building in the future, what would you share with them that this type of what I would call, people go to Mecca, but today, or at least this year, they should be a pilgrimage to experience the Titan exhibit and why?
I think for people to come to the Lewis Museum to experience the Titan exhibit is, again, an opportunity for them to see how real Reginald F. Lewis was. I think in history, typically we like to romanticize figures and we like to put individuals on pedestals. And I think we've done the opposite. I think we did our best to humanize him in a way where you can see his lessons learned and you can see how he bounced back from failure. And, his own words, keep going no matter what, I think is inspirational for any entrepreneur to take away from that experience. I'm not an entrepreneur, but I think that those words are still inspiring for me. And so if I can hold on to that and apply that to my life, whether it's professional or personal, I think that anyone, entrepreneur or not, should be able to do the same. And so, again, I think just having those real lessons learned and the way Reginald F. Lewis applied those teachable moments in his life, and now making certain that he could pave the way for other entrepreneurs who may be visiting the exhibit to, have a moment to say, you know what, yeah, I might have failed at this and that, but this is my contingency plan, or this is how I need to bounce back from it, because we talk about those things in our show. So I think that's sort of that balance that I like to give, that real history that I like to make certain that our visitors can experience when they come to the Lewis Museum.
When you think about Afrofuturism design and aesthetic, and you moved in that room by yourself, how has he spoken to you?
Wow.
Kind of say, okay, you get me. Okay, this connects. Yeah, they can walk through this door. They can sit with me for a while. I'll come by. How has that been, so that when people think about going to museums, particularly the Titan, and once again, being there and the thoughtfulness of it. I mean, and I lost myself in it. Like that was the beauty of kind of what the elegance and grace of the spaces, each space. And not like somebody gave us, 2 football fields, but in each space, I never felt crowded. And I felt like I was going through another door. I felt like I was taking another trip.
Oh, that's good. That means that we achieved our goal. We didn't want a linear experience. And we wanted people to be able to start in any aspect of this exhibit and to be able to sit with the messages that, that we provided to them in terms of those learning goals. It's a lot of strategy behind design and building and, the creative process. And luckily I have a team of individuals that will tell me, okay, this does not make sense. Okay, this works. and I like to draw on my team and in terms of making certain that there is a democratic process to everyone's voice around the table being heard in terms of the ideas of how we want to, captivate audiences and what type of meaningful takeaways we want to explore. And so I think what you may or may not recognize in the exhibit is that there was a level of artistry in this exhibit because we focus on a lot of the geometrical shapes that were reminiscent to the facade of our building in terms of the architecture of the Lewis Museum. And that was a nod to our 20th anniversary. So when you see the graphics on the wall, you'll see those geometrical shapes that sort of are reminiscent to the facade of the building. And so that was a small detail that people may not pay attention to, but when you go back, you'll see it. and I guess for those who haven't seen the exhibit, they'll pick up on it. But it was, we were that intricate in terms of details and so that way people can get lost in a way with the images, with the art, with the objects and the artifacts and the storytelling. And so, the way that you describe, being lost in those moments, I think it's a good problem to have in terms of people being able to get lost in the story and having sort of this escapism for the moment to really, really connect to Reginald F. Lewis and his story and to the experiences that we wanted our visitors to take away.
You know, the light and dark and mood based on those shapes that actually, to me, it felt like elevators, that you were riding an elevator, you came down. Clearly, to get on the desk, you've got to go up. And the movement just to take yourself and elevate whoever went up, I thought was amazing in the design aesthetic to give people the movement. You will ascend if you have come in. You will go to the next level. And I felt like there were corridors each time you moved where the imagination could go and take you based on what they were saying. And that reflection was with you. And then you had to take another passage, and then it took you someplace. And I didn't feel like it ended, if you will. By the time I got to the other side of the room, I felt like I could keep going and going and going and going and going and know that I was supposed to be there and that he was there with me and that it was a space for me to fill up. So
I'm grateful that it was a spiritual journey for you. And I think, I think that was the ultimate goal, for it to be a journey. And I love your explanation of your experience. And it makes me know that we're doing our jobs well, and it actually becomes our benchmark. So thank you for sharing.
Cool. Well, ladies and gentlemen, if you haven't experienced, and please go experience the Titan at the Reginald Lewis Museum of Maryland history, but I just think it's the history of all people. It's a wonderful place. It's a wonderful space. You've done an excellent job, Robert, you and the team, the girls. They have definitely filled it with love and pride and prestige in going in. And obviously, I think for any child born in Baltimore or Maryland to walk in there, I think he gives them a pedigree that they didn't give it. He says it's yours, so you can claim it. It's in you. And thank you for that. I'm Munson Steed, and this has been Robert Parker here on Design and Dialogue on Rolling Out.